Good afternoon. My name is Ethan Mansour. My co-author, Will Hanley, was not able to make it, but together we worked on throughout the year going through what we found as an intersectional power between soft and informational, and kind of highlighting, especially in the Pacific Island countries, about how this intersectional power might be used, especially when we vie for influence against China. Going kind of into that, the Pacific Island countries are those three areas with a lot of smaller countries themselves around it, and the biggest thing for them right now is that their national security consistently being on the news, consistently having where power competition has lied and has lied for the past few years. One of the key things was, especially it's one of the closest islands to Taiwan, and back in 2019 there were 6 of them that actually had diplomatic relations, but over the past 6 years, half of them have now left, and that means that they've usually taken aid from China, because you cannot have diplomatic relations with Taiwan and take aid from China, and this is very important when we start talking about soft power and informational power, and how and power competition between the United States and China. Can I go into that about what intersectional power is? You have to understand what we're kind of intersecting itself. Soft power, based off of Joseph Nye's definition, is the ability to persuade or attract through culture. Informational power is over dissemination of knowledge and data storage itself. Kind of the intersecting area for that, especially, is how we're influencing and how we're making populations or governments perceive and track and follow along. So you want to convince someone to work with you, but you also want to be able to control what information they're gathering at the same time. And so when you target across all domains, using this intersectional power, you can either aim for short-term tactical goals about like whether an operation's happening, or like what you want one deal to go through, or long-term strategic, being like siding with the United States or siding against the United States overall for what our enemies are going to be looking for. Kind of going into what we thought is the best tool to be attacking this intersectional power, especially in the Pacific Island countries, is human security. Human security itself is a multi-sector, non-traditional form of security. It hits all the securities over there, and the slide on the right side, the infographic, is talking about one of the key components of human security, which is a freedom from, and then it has 4 different things. The idea is you want to sustain whatever security you're trying to build up in these countries, and so the fact they're not relying on consistent aid over and over and over, and so that they're able to sustain themselves from both what's considered bottom up, which is the community leading up, and top down, which is governments themselves helping fund the communities and deal with some of these key security threats within these sectors. Okay, this is kind of where we're going to lie. A lot of the paper talks about some of these human security threats within the Pacific Island countries and how that kind of relates into what we're talking about building intersectional power. In general, while environmental security is farther away from most of the intersectional power stuff, it is one of the most key threats for almost all the Pacific Island countries. This is mainly due to sometimes water levels rising, droughts increasing, and this will cause what is mostly small economic countries that really rely on either sustainable farming or land itself, as it starts to lose some parts of its land, to heavily focus on that more. And so a lot of their conferences, this is one of their key issues that they're bringing up. And if you're going to make a deal, if you're going to try and attack and influence, you're going to have to make sure that you're speaking something that they're also going to listen to at the same point. And this kind of goes into the next 3 things, which lie a lot more within their intersectional power: information infrastructure and non-technological forms of influence, or information itself gathering. If you're training a police force, you're getting the information that you want, you're influencing the people itself, along with kind of creating that soft power that is there to overall sustain long-term influence. On top of that, buying media programs, or even bringing media like journalists into your country to train. So China does this a lot, actually, and they'll bring a lot of these local, small newspapers, and they'll bring them into China, they'll teach them all about journalism, and then they'll send them back, or they'll buy these local areas. And so the news stays the same, the name is the same, but the local media has been either slightly has deals or stuff like that is being influenced itself by Chinese programs. But also at the same time, both Australia and the United States also offer what we would consider exchange programs with our universities. And so that is the second part of your kind of information operations, is that you're able to influence outside of just the basic infrastructure that you're building up, and you're starting to teach them about American values or Chinese values, and that together, when they come back to their country, is starting to build that intersectional power. And then lastly, kind of the key thing, especially on this slide, is the information infrastructure. One of the most key things, especially as the UN and a lot of the global community starts to come together with the essential right of the internet and how it is needed. The building of internet infrastructure throughout, with our submarine cables, with cellular networks themselves and all the towers, is going to consistently come into play. And if we're trying to compete for influence or even access and control over information systems, it's going to come into that scenario as well. Overall, what Will and I came to some major conclusions was, while the new technology and conventional theories of security have to be somewhat revised, especially when we're dealing with countries that military is not that power, or just one type of security does not encase what their key focus is on, especially if we're going to try and to build influence and sustain America's soft power as China consistently tries to compete with us and outgrow us. On top of that, looking at, as cyber becomes a bigger thing within these countries, looking at some of the freedoms and how they develop, the freedom of want, freedom from fear, and how they develop within the cyber realm, and trying to combat those early on instead of having issues where you see sometimes elsewhere when countries are newly establishing their infrastructure, there's cyber attacks and weaknesses within their system. And kind of overall in general, using this intersectional power, trying to counter the Chinese influence, especially within operational environments, gathering influence with us if it comes down to a fight within that region, or if it comes down to just long-term competition. That region will be one of the most key areas, just sustaining as it's nearest to our Australian ally, and also keeping us close within Taiwan and keeping their diplomatic relations still existent. Are there any questions?